I did want to see if you had any moments of levity that you'd like to share, either with you and your son, with you and the teams that you participated in. There's three Olympiads that you got to cross over with. We're in coming out of some somber times here, so I think laughter is good medicine. I do some comedy skits on the side. I don't know if you've seen them. I got a pretty good Rocky Balboa imitation. So
well, I'd love to hear that. That would be more interesting.
I will send them to you.
So I do have one. I have one story with one of my teammates, a guy that you would remember, and if any of your audience is old enough, hopefully they haven't forgotten the legendary Mark Spitz. Mark Spitz was a teammate of mine in Indiana. He was a year older, but and Mark Spitz is remembered as being the guy that won 7 gold medals in the 1972 Munich Olympics, which was the most at the time and only surpassed later, many decades later, by Michael Phelps. But what they don't know about Mark was one of the most, he was a hypochondriac. A lot of people don't know that about him. And we used to laugh because in practice, there was not a workout that we went to where Mark did not have what he thought was either a myocardial infarction or a stroke. He thought he had a cerebral bleed, but he would say, I'm having a heart attack right now. And he was doing anything to try to get out of workout. But he was very, very suggestible. He was hypochondriac, very aware of his body, thinking, whenever he had a pain, he was dying. But he was also a very suggestible guy. So one year we used to go to Florida and train at the Hall of Fame in Fort Lauderdale. And we're down there. And our team that year, this was like 1971, our team would have been probably the 5th greatest country in the world. We could have Indiana could have gone to the Olympics as a country and won more medals than almost any other country in the world. Out of the 12 world records that were on the books, the Indiana swimmers held 10 of them. I mean, that's how dominant we were. So the Miami Herald reporter calls Doc up and says, I'd love to interview you guys. Can I talk to, Gary Holm and Mark Spitz and do a little interview? And he says, sure, tomorrow afternoon, it'd be great. So that afternoon, the word gets around that the interview is going to go on. And one of the guys who's training with us in the same lane with Mark and I is a guy from Canada named Ron Jacks. And Ron was a pretty good swimmer. He wasn't a great swimmer, he was a good swimmer. But he had this uncanny ability to tease Mark. Doc wouldn't let people tease Mark, but Ron could tease Mark anytime. He just had that, he couldn't help himself. And he knew how suggestible Mark was. So he just couldn't hold back. And so we get done with this long set. We're sitting on the edge of the pool and Mark's got his feet up on the gutter. And Ron Jacks looks over and he said, Mark, what is wrong with your ankles? And Mark goes, what do you mean? He said, I don't know, but they're all swollen. They look really bad. They look painful. Mark said, what? And he's looking down at his ankles, and then we do another set. And then he sits up on the side of the pool and Mark and Ron Jacks said, Mark, you better have those ankles checked out because they definitely don't look right. And he's totally fabricating this. I mean, it's just out of the blue. I mean, it's just completely
just ad-libbing the whole thing.
Ad-libbing. And so sure enough, at the end of practice, we get out, we go over to get our towels, and Mark is limping. He's like limping to get his towel. He's like hobbling along, barely able to get to his towel, grabs his towel, dries off. Then we're in the car on the way home. We're talking about open water swimming. And everybody's saying how maybe when they're done swimming, they're going to go into open waters. And Mark says, I would do that. He said, but I don't know if my ankles would hold up in the cold water.
That is classic.
What? So the next day we're interviewed by the Miami Herald. And they said, the reporter asked both of us, said, what do you think you guys are, you're expected to win the NC2As this year. She asked both of us, how do you think you're going to do? And I said, we've got an awesome team. We're going to be great. We're going to be tough. If anybody beats us, more power to them. And Mark turns to her and says, if my ankles hold up, I think we can do really well. And I start to laugh. And sure enough, in the article, she says, what's wrong with your ankles? I said, well, they're really weak. I have weak ankles.
Wow.
And the next day in the article, it talks about how the Indiana can win the NC2As if Mark Spitz's ankles hold up. And Doc is furious. He comes to us, he says, what is this about Mark's ankles? Where is this coming from? And Mark says, well, Ron Jacks told me my ankles look bad. And Doc says, Ron, you idiot, what are you doing?
That's an awesome story.
So Ron had to go back and apologize and said, no, Mark, your ankles are fine. And we ended up winning the NC2As, and his ankles were healthy again.